Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, entitled Parent Tries Taking My Emotional Support Dog. After that, flight attendant is told to get an in-flight movie that is interesting. And after that, the keys are in that box. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to take anyone else's dog. There's a reason they call me Cruella. Oh, I can't wait to see that movie. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Entitled Parent Tries Taking My Emotional Support Dog. I have pretty bad PTSD, and I also have a tic disorder along with anxiety, so me plus people don't work out. My dog is completely trained and is meant for panic attacks, may I add. So I'm walking through the mall with my large lab mix named Tiger. He has his vest on, which clearly states he is a service dog. He was walking in our normal position, him on my right, slightly behind so he can watch me. He doesn't mind kids, so if I'm having a good day, I will have him sit and let the kids play with him. I go to that mall quite a lot, so I see the same kids often, and I've honestly bonded with a few of the families. Enter the entitled mother. I don't remember ever talking to her, so when she walked right up to me, I was quite confused. I wasn't having a very good day, so while I was standing, doing I don't know what, Tiger was laying between me and doing slow circles because that makes me feel safe. "Excuse me, may my son pet your dog?" she says in the Karen voice. You know what I mean. "I'm sorry, but he's a service dog and he's on duty, so he can't be pet right now," or something like that. I said this in my sweetest dealing with kids voice because I didn't want to seem like I was arrogant or anything. I went back to doing whatever I was doing. Tiger puts his paws on my thigh when something's wrong, and I immediately look down. The small kid, probably around 4 to 6, was petting him. "Excuse me, can you tell your son not to touch my dog?" I again used a polite voice. "Why? I've seen you let other kids pet your dog," she snapped at me. I could feel the panic attack building up. I started shaking slightly, but was able to calm myself pretty fast. "Mommy, can I have the doggy?" My head snapped towards the kid, who was tugging on the leash and vest. "Of course, honey. How much for the dog?" He's not for sale. As I said, he's a service dog and is trained specifically by me for me. He was only partially trained when we adopted him, and I finished his training. "So, my son needs a service dog. He's clearly blind." In my brain, hold up, this doesn't add up. "Ma'am, if he did need one, you would have to have a dog trained specifically for him, because my dog is trained for PTSD. She huffed, grabbed her son, and walked off. I thought that was the end of it and walked to the food court. I sat with my pretzel and went through some schoolwork, I think. After a couple of minutes, I heard the same annoying Karen voice. "Okay, son, so distract that lady." I was confused, but for some reason went back to what I was doing. "Excuse me, miss." "Yes?" "What kind of doggy do you have?" Well, he's a lab." I didn't know what to say because what should I say? He's like 6. Out of nowhere, I hear Tiger yelp and immediately looked to see where he was at. And there was Karen, holding his lead with one hand and his vest with the other. He was now about 3 feet away from me, so he was clearly uncomfortable. "Give me my dog." I was definitely way too calm for the situation I was in. "He's my dog. Someone called the police. This crazy lady is trying to take my service dog." I was shaking and breathing heavy because of one of my major triggers is people yelling at me. I was seriously upset. Not only did she steal my dog from me, but she then called me crazy. "Ma'am, give me my dog. Do you even know his name?" I'm still shaking and somehow managed to keep a stable and firm voice. "This is my dog, Ginger." Tiger didn't even move when he heard that. He was still standing here being handled by this nut job. I whistled because that's what I usually used to call him. "Tiger, come." He pulls hard on her to get to me and dragged her to the ground. She looked like she was about to explode. He sat between me again and I grabbed his lead. "See, my dog." She pulls herself up and dragged my dog back to her again, smacking my arm in the process. She hit right where one of my worst scars are, and at that point, I lost all composure. "Give me my dog." I didn't care about being kind anymore. She didn't budge. "It's my dog. I'm calling the police." Enter Tyler and Sarah, a sweet younger couple who me and my family know quite well. OP? Who is that woman holding Tiger? A psycho jerk that stole my dog. I'm shaking hard and was on the verge of tears because, PTSD. Sarah walked over and worked on trying to calm me down while Tiger was dealing with Thunder Jerk. Give me the dog back before I have to do something I will regret. Fun fact, Tyler's in the army. Don't touch me. I'll call my husband. He's a lieutenant. Where at? Because I'm a first lieutenant. She completely stopped talking, handed over the dog, grabbed her poor son, and booked it out of here. Sadly, there's no happy ending really, but if anything changes, I'll update you. By the way, I took Tyler and Sarah out for ice cream after that incident. I no longer leave Tiger's lead laying around if I'm not holding it. Speaking of dogs, do you have a dog? And if so, what's their name? Please let us know. We've got a teacup poodle named Karen Jr. I love her so much. Flight attendant is told to get an in-flight movie that is interesting. This malicious compliance belongs to my beautiful wife. But since it's from many decades ago, from a time before we knew each other, we will call her Classy Flight Attendant here. First, the usual disclaimers. I'm on computer, so completely responsible for the formatting. English is my first and third language, and my mother was a school teacher, so I'm also completely responsible for my use of spelling and grammar. The setup. At the time of this event, Classy Flight Attendant is one of the top-tier flight attendants for her country's national airline. Strictly speaking, any of their flights that do not involve parts in the USA or its territories are not required to follow all FAA rules. However, whenever they fly to ports regulated by the FAA, they are expected to follow those rules to the T. Of course, it doesn't always work out that way in practice. On this occasion, Classy Flight Attendant has just landed from Europe at her home airport in South America, only to learn that she's being turned around for a round trip to New York City. She protests. By the time she lands in New York, she will be well outside FAA rest period rules with all the consequences that could follow. Her supervisors don't care. They need her on that flight right now, and away she goes. But she knows the flight to New York isn't the real problem. It's the return trip that will be pure misery. Her compatriots flying home from New York tend to be extremely entitled. They're coming from New York. That makes them somebody now. They will refuse drink service when offered, and then when the flight attendant is 3 or 4 rows further along, push the call button and order a drink. They will keep an attendant hopping back and forth the whole flight for stupid little things, many of them things they could actually do for themselves. Classy Flight Attendant is tired and knows that dealing with this entitled crowd on the return trip is going to be the worst. As they get into New York, she's told to check out an in-flight movie for the return trip. The suggestion is made to make it interesting enough to keep the passengers too busy to order the flight crew around that much. Cue the malicious compliance. As she looks over the options and finds the perfect film, it will keep the passengers riveted to their seats. Frankly, given the nature of the film, she isn't even sure why it exists in the cartridge format used on planes at this time. Perhaps because the format is also used on some yachts and cruise ships, she orders it. Once on board, she keeps it secret. She knows that once she pops it in and it starts to play, the systems in use at that time cannot be stopped. But any time before that, she could be thwarted. Mid-flight, as the plane is well out over the ocean on its way south, she pops it in. Airport 77. For those who don't know, this film is about a plane that crashed in the ocean. The results are immediate and absolute. While there are many white knuckles, no one seems inclined to press their call buttons, and Classy Flight Attendant has a very quiet, uninterrupted rest of the remainder of the flight home. The aftermath. As she is deboarding, one old lady is heard saying that she will never fly national airline again. When called on the carpet for her movie choice, Classy Flight Attendant feigns ignorance, claiming to have thought it was the much more comical Airplane and that the name was lost in translation. She is given a 3-day suspension, which is for her a much-needed rest. Oh, and she will never be allowed to pick the in-flight movie ever again. The keys are in that box. A little backstory to get you caught up. My father was a welder at a pulp and paper mill on maintenance with a union. There were around 500 people who worked here at the time, mid to late 80s. On my dad's crew, there was a man they called Squirrel because he would take anything small enough to carry and take it home. Some of the things were specialized tools made for a certain machine, and they would have to be ordered in again at the company's expense. I guess there wasn't much the mill could do because somehow the union backed him. It wasn't long before my father's tools started going missing. He knew where to look and found them in Squirrel's toolbox and some scattered on his workbench. Squirrel was an average-sized man, around 5'9" to 5'10", but my father was a huge man, standing at 6'5" and around 250 pounds, so Squirrel didn't say a word. He was too scared to. My father reported this to the union rep and the main office and was told that they will investigate. Squirrel was given a 1-week paid suspension while the investigation went on. They found many of the missing things in his locker, lunchbox, toolbox, etc. Somehow, he got the union to back him again and was allowed to come back to work at the end of his suspension. My father grabbed his mobile welder and went to Squirrel's area and welded together a giant metal box. He took everything he could identify as Squirrel's and put it in the box and welded a top on it. He said he used 5/8 stainless to make it out of. He then got the help of one of his work buddies to lift the box, and Dad welded it to the bathroom of the I-beam on the ceiling, about 20 feet in the air. The day Squirrel came back, he was looking for all of his things, but couldn't find it at all. He asked everyone he could, but no one said a word, except, "I take care of my tools. Maybe you should take better care of yours." This went on for a couple of hours until Squirrel went into the main office to complain, saying someone stole everything of his. The shop steward and Squirrel walked into the maintenance shop to ask the people in there where his things were. Dad stood up and walked up close, and knowing him, he was towering over Squirrel, and said something along the lines of, "Squirrels like to climb to store their stuff. Are you sure you didn't climb the I-beam and put your stuff up there?" I guess the look of, "Oh no," on the shop steward's face was almost too good, but the look of pure horror on Squirrel's face was my dad's favorite part of this story. He would laugh just as hard at every telling when he got to this part. Squirrel went into his work area and looked up. He saw the box up there. He tried to get anyone's help to get it down, but everyone seemed to have important things to do and can't at the moment. Squirrel took a day and a half working alone to get his things from the box and to remove the box from where it was welded. My father said not a thing ever went missing again, and Squirrel worked there another 10 years or more until the mill was shut down. I can say I believe him, because one night, staying at his place, I got drunk and was thinking about going home. He went to the basement and made a little box and welded my keys in it. I got them back the next day. I miss my father and his stories. I hope this qualifies as pro. Have you ever had someone take things that belong to you? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. You take my sanity by making me listen to these stories all day. Am I the jerk for leaving a family gathering and insisting mother-in-law apologize over M&Ms? My wife, 34 female, and I, 31 female, have 2 wonderful kids who are both 4, they're twins. They were conceived with my wife's eggs and a known donor, and I carried/birthed them. Both kids ended up being practical clones of my wife, so it's pretty clear to everyone who contributed the genetic material. My in-laws had everyone together at their house earlier this month. We've all had our shots, and the weather was so nice that we had a barbecue. My kids were playing outside with their cousins, and sister-in-law and mother-in-law and I were chatting in the kitchen. At one point, my 2 run inside from playing and ask if they can have some M&Ms that they see on the counter. I tell them, no, we'll be eating in 15 minutes. You can have some after dinner. They run back out, and mother-in-law excuses herself to go outside. A little bit later, sister-in-law and I get the call that the food is ready, so we go outside, and I see my kids each have a little cup full of M&Ms that they are eating. I tell my kids that they knew they were not supposed to be eating those, and I took away the cups. Mother-in-law comes over and says that she gave them the M&Ms and that they can have them. To which I replied, no they can't, it's dinner time. You were there when I told them no. Mother-in-law says again that they can have some chocolate, it's fine, and tries to take the cups out of my hands. We go back and forth with no, yes, no for a minute, prompting wife to start walking over to us, just in time to hear mother-in-law say in front of my kids, I'm saying it's okay. They aren't even your kids. They're your wives. Just give them the chocolate. Wife had mother-in-law repeat herself and said something like, absolutely not. We're leaving. I put the M&Ms on the nearest table, grabbed both my kids, who were now softly crying, and started to pack our stuff. The whole event erupted into chaos. Father-in-law screaming about the disrespect of us leaving, grandmother crying, brother-in-law and sister-in-law arguing with father-in-law, mother-in-law crying that her only daughter is abandoning her. It was a mess. After a couple hours at home, the kids seemed okay, But mother-in-law saying I'm not their mom really scared them. Wife spent about 4 hours on rotating phone calls with all of her family, from father-in-law screaming at her, mother-in-law crying over how we took her grandkids away over M&Ms and made her out to be the bad grandma, brother-in-law trying to get in the drama, grandmother depressed, saying she would pass without seeing her great-grandkids again. Wife's message to all of them was that mother-in-law needed to apologize to me and to our kids for what she said. We made it clear that we would have no problem spending time with grandmother or brother-in-law's family, but we would not bring the kids around mother-in-law until she apologized. As you can guess, the apology has not happened, but the phone calls of guilt trips, yelling, and crying have not let up. I feel an apology is not even a big deal, and at this point, mother-in-law is making the choice not to see her grandkids. I want to hold firm, but I know how hard this all is on my wife, even if I really don't think it's my fault. Am I the jerk for insisting on an apology? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know. If mother-in-law has the nerve to say something like that, then the babies don't need to be around her in the first place. 2 months in the customer service job, and it finally happened. I work for the company that employs electricians for small jobs. Part of my job is to answer the phone, take their information, type a quick summary of the job, and then open the work order for the electrician, which they will then use to contact the client and do the requested work. So the municipal elections are happening, and it is Friday afternoon. Suddenly, I get a call from a new client who tells me that the light fixture at the polling place nearby has a light fixture that is not working. The light that is not working is located right above the booth. After getting all the basic information, the call starts pretty much like they all do. The people are not able to see the numbers they are writing on the tickets. Can you send an electrician to fix the lighting? She says in a flustered tone. Sure, ma'am. Since this seems to be urgent, I can give you the information of the electrician who is currently nearby working another job. There's also another electrician who is currently here at the office. I can ask if they're free to take a work order right now. At this point, I'm interrupted. Yes, this is very urgent. Go and talk to the one who is there right now. We are located about 15 minutes away from the polling location, so this might be faster, considering that the electrician who is currently on the job can't really just leave to do another job. So I take the phone with me and head towards the break area to talk to the other electrician. After walking around the warehouse, I find the electrician talking on his phone, most likely with another client. I do some gesturing to him, asking if he's free after this call. When I get the answer, I update the lady who is on the phone with me. The electrician is speaking to another client right now, but as soon as he finishes his call, he can call you, and at this point, I'm interrupted again. Just take his phone and tell him this is an emergency. The election is surely more important. There is, and I'm being serious here, a 10-second silence as I'm feeling confused. After collecting my thoughts and realizing that she's being serious, I finally answer, I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm cut short yet again. At this point, her talking gets so fast and even more confusing. There's a lot of talking about how I would not want our company to end up on the local newspaper. She actually mentioned some bigger ones too, but oh well, for not offering the proper service and thus ruining the election. After more silence and awkward answers, I finally give her the information of the electrician who is working nearby, with the promise of also following through with the one who is currently on the phone. She also asks for contact info of my supervisor, which I also give her, because I have to. So the phone call ends and the electrician comes over to the office after finishing his call. I give him the summary of the job, and as I'm doing that, the electrician who is with me gets a call from my supervisor. He collects his equipment and leaves to do the work order at the polling place. After an hour or so, he returns from his job and I ask him how it went. Apparently, the lady had contacted pretty much every company in the area that offers the electrician services. So when our electrician arrived at the venue, there were a total of 6 guys from different companies already running around fixing a single light fixture. In the end, the light bulb was not screwed in tightly enough. The janitor of the venue had changed all of the light bulbs before the booths opened, leaving that single light bulb loose. What I heard is that the woman had threatened multiple local companies at the site about their slow response and unprofessional behavior. I know that the municipal elections are a big deal, but I have never before thought that the organizers are under so much stress that they would act like this. I guess it was just a matter of time before I encountered a customer like this. But the scale of this. Wow. Edit. I did drop by the guy who writes our invoices as I was leaving for the day. All the companies will, most likely, charge all their working hours rounded up because of all the time they wasted. What surprised me though was that the organizers told everyone at the site to direct their invoices to the venue owner. Apparently, it was his fault for not following through with the preparations properly. Whether he is the one who has to pay for this fiasco, or if he then forwards it to the organizers after, is something we will probably never find out. Not putting in enough hours, you say? A few years ago, I worked as a field engineer for a call recording company. I worked primarily with 911 agencies and would integrate recording systems with radio and phone systems to record the calls and radio traffic. If you've heard a 911 call on the news from one of a few states along the East Coast, there's a good chance I built and installed that system. As part of our company's policy, we would do preventative maintenance every 6 months. This was where we went on site, tested everything was functioning properly, and showed some value in our maintenance contracts through FaceTime with the customers. After some years, I had climbed the ladder to being the lead engineer, installer, and trainer. I trained most of the other engineers and techs within the company along with performing my normal duties. I had also installed the vast majority of the systems I was doing maintenance on and was extremely familiar with them. A maintenance visit took me around an hour, where it took the new guys 4 to 5 hours, and I would usually knock out 2 to 3 maintenance visits in a single day. I had literally triple the numbers as the next closest tech. As often happens, eventually the company was bought out. The new owner came in and presented himself as very metrics focused. The problem was that he didn't understand what we did in the field, so his metrics weren't always good ones. Eventually, I got written up and put on a performance improvement plan. The reason? Days I didn't have to drive far, I would finish 3 maintenance visits and still be home in less than 6 hours. Again, my actual performance metrics were legitimately triple the next closest tech, and most days I worked well over 8 hours when driving was included. But instead of looking at those metrics, he used time as his only metric and focused solely on the shortest days. And unfortunately for me, I objectively worked less time than anyone else. Now for the malicious compliance. Instead of scheduling the way I had previously, I started scheduling to ensure I hit 8 hours a day every day. Previously, I had started at a customer site at 9 a.m., whether it was 1 hour away or 5, so would get up at whatever time that day required. I would also try to knock out multiple customers in the same area on the same trip to save driving time on longer days. Some days I would drive 12 hours total, knock out 3 maintenance visits, taking another few hours, and have a total day of 15 plus hours. Afterwards, I left for sites at exactly 8 a.m. and tried to get home at exactly 5 p.m. For those sites that were 5 hours away, can't do them without a hotel room. Instead of costing a full tank of gas and a single day's wages for 3 clients, it now cost the company the same amount of gas, 3 to 4 nights in a hotel, and multiple days of my salary. For closer sites that I didn't need a hotel, I would make sure I didn't leave too soon to get home at exactly 5 p.m., so would sit in a server room playing games on my phone for a few hours. If sites were close enough, I would still try to knock out 2 or sometimes 3, but if time was the metric, I was going to make sure I worked as closely to 8 to 5 as possible without doing anything detrimental to a customer. Overall, I was trying to make a point to show that while I may have been meeting the time metric, I was actually doing less work by meeting that metric. We did employee reviews every quarter, so when my next review came around 3 months later, I tried to bring it up. Instead, the new owner praised me for working harder and ignored that I was doing significantly less work. During that meeting, I tried showing that it was costing the company more, and I was achieving less by meeting that metric instead of an actual performance metric. But somehow, despite my spreadsheets showing costs, site visits, completed maintenance, and everything else, he refused to understand it. He kept praising how my work ethic had improved and didn't want me to change anything or go back. So I didn't change a thing and coasted at that job for the next few years. I don't work here, and neither does my bag. For those who aren't aware, Aldi is a chain of mid-sized grocery stores. They rebranded themselves a few years ago as a sort of middle ground between a standard grocer and Whole Foods, with options healthier than, say, Walmart, but not full-on super health craze like Whole Foods. But one of the defining characteristics of Aldi is that you pay for your cart. There's a device that locks up all the carts together, so when you need one, you insert a quarter into the device, decoupling it from the next cart. When you finish shopping, you return the cart to the line and recouple it, at which point you can then remove your quarter. However, Aldi does not offer a similar function for anything else. Not hand-carried baskets, and definitely not for bags. This is where our story begins. I do most of my grocery shopping at Walmart, but I do hit the Aldi nearby for a few small things. Usually, I don't need to bother with a cart due to the low volume. Instead, I bring in my own foil-lined insulated bag. I have the bags because I live out in the country, so when I get takeout or buy cold stuff at the store, the stuff is still hot or cold respectively by the time I get home 15 minutes later. When I go to Aldi, I just bring the insulated bag in with me, put items into it while I shop, tell the cashier how many of each item I have so I don't even need to unload them, and easy peasy, no carts required. As I left the store, had just removed my mask as I passed through the doors, a few weeks ago, our dear Karen saw me with the bag in hand. I hadn't zipped it up yet as I was still messing with the mask and had some fridge cold stuff from Walmart I was going to put into the bag in the truck before I started home. Karen must have seen that it had the foil insulation with purchased items, and this is what ensued. Karen,
Hey, you!
snapping her fingers. Why do they always snap?
You!
I turned to face her. Yes? Karen,
Give me that when you're done.
points at my bag. Me, ma'am, these are my groceries. I won't be done with them until I eat them in the coming weeks.
I know that. What do I look like? A moron?
Well,
I mean the bag, idiot.
me, ma'am, this bag is also mine.
Yeah, it's yours now, but when you bring it back to get your coin, then I want it.
Me, again, this is my bag, not the store's. Aldi doesn't have bags. They only do the quarter thing for the carts.
BS. They have bags at the checkout. I can see them from here.
Yeah, those are for sale, not temporary use. And this bag isn't from Aldi. I got it on Amazon.
Whatever. You should still bring it to me. I only need it for a few minutes, and I don't have a quarter for the carts anyway.
Oh, so we're in one of those situations. Gotcha. I'm in my current military job. I'm an instructor, and one of the skills we master during this assignment is the art of staring in silence with a completely blank look on our face. It's a great tool to force students to engage in discussion, embracing the silence until one of them gets so uncomfortable that they start talking about anything just to break the silence. We also use continuous questions to challenge students to delve deeper into topics, like lots of why and how questions that force them to come to their own conclusions. Me, stares in silence. Karen, after almost 10 seconds.
Well?
Me, well what? Karen,
What are you waiting for? Go unload your groceries and bring me that bag.
she was approaching shrill by the end of that sentence. Me, why would I do that?
Because I need that bag to shop.
Why is that my problem?
What are you talking about?
Why is your lack of bags or coins something I need to help you with? Karen, visibly struggling with the effort of thinking.
Because...
Her head cocks to the side a bit, then she rallies back into indignation mode.
Ugh, just get out of my face, you little jerk.
Me, weren't you the one who stopped me to demand I give you my personal property? Karen, devolving into guttural utterances that barely resembled a spoken language. Me, still hiding behind my stoic instructor face. Karen,
You people are what's wrong with this country.
she stormed off into the store without a cart. Me, have a wonderful day, as I wave at her. Oh, the joys of malicious passivity. Am I the jerk for not responding to employers' emails outside of working hours? I have just started working for a huge organization. It's set on 40 acres of land and employs roughly 1,000 members of staff. It's not a theme park, but it is an attraction. I have not long graduated university and will be going back to study my master's in September. This is a temporary, minimum wage, general dog's body customer service type role. The contract runs out at the end of August. I thought this is an excellent opportunity to earn a bit of money between studying. One of the things I've noticed, though, is that they constantly send out emails. Between 6 to 10 emails a day, every day. Some are just news bulletins, others are blog posts and updates from the directors and other various departments, etc. However, some of them are important and require a response, such as acknowledging changes to policies and procedures, and due to the nature and size of the organization, this appears to happen a lot. The emails contain documents comprised of pages and pages of information that needs to be acknowledged, understood, signed, and returned. Before I begin explaining the issue, I feel I must inform you that due to the size of the organization, Staff are authorized to have their mobile phones on our person during our shifts. So anyway, having returned to work after a couple of days off, I was collared by one of the supervisors who asked why I haven't been responding to emails recently, as they've sent out several important emails, including follow-ups. I responded that I've been off for a few days and was just about to read through them now and take action accordingly. They then proceeded to tell me in a rather condescending tone that the emails can be actioned in our free time outside of work. I respectfully said, "But that's my free time." They were then pretty adamant that it's too much reading, etc. to be done during our working hours when I'm employed to work. I was like, "No offense, but I've been employed on minimum wage and am not a salaried member of the team who is reasonably expected to spend so much time conducting work tasks outside of work. It's now become a whole issue, and I'm being made to feel like I am not a team player. I can't help but feel like I'm not being unreasonable. So, am I the jerk?" Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their supervisor? Please let us know.
You want me to be a team player? You better pay me like a team player.
Come watch this video next, you're gonna love it.
And if you support our channel by joining as a member today, we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make a happy birthday video for you or a loved one, head over to our Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.